My spoiled sister is out of jail and now she expects me to give her everything to start her life over. My sister has always been spoiled by my parents, coming from a family with 3 brothers and only her as the girl. She was always my parents' favorite as they had always wanted a daughter. I didn't really care about this as by the time she was born I was close to adopted and already had plans to move out. So all that was left for me was to feel sorry for what my brothers would go through under my parents and her influence. Nevertheless, I still had to live with her for a while. During the time we was together, I witnessed the worth way there is a child. My parents always gave her everything she wanted the moment she asked, allowed her to break things and take my brother's belongings, let her shout at other kids on the street, and so on. I always talked to my parents about it, but they just said it wasn't my concern and that they would raise the child as they saw fit. In fact, I reluctantly agreed and decided to let it go, only intervening when I was directly affected by the things she did. Eventually I managed to move out, but that didn't remove me from the whirlwind of problems that her behavior brought. Every week my brothers would come to me frying, telling me about the things she did, like breaking their belongings, scratching the walls of their rooms and taking their food, and so on. I always argued with my parents about it, but the breaking point came on my youngest brother's birthday. He was overjoyed and kept looking at the birthday cake because what he loved most about parties was blowing out the candles. On the other hand, my sister was irritated that the day wasn't about her and constantly tried to grab everyone's attention, always unsuccessfully. Then, when it was time for my little brother to blow out the eagerly awaited candles, my sister just jumped in front of him, blew out the candles and left laughing. My parents also laughed and tried to divert the guests' attention elsewhere while my brother cried as many were upset by what had just happened. That's when I finally stood up and started shouting about how unfair everything was and that they should reprimand that spoiled girl once and for all. All this ended with me relighting the candles and my little brother blowing them out. The years went by, my sister remained spoiled, but as my brothers turned 18, I allowed them to move into my house until they had enough money to live on their own. For a long time, we all lived in peace without having to worry about our belongings being taken in the middle of the night. Or our things being vandalized. Now that my mother had to deal with my sister's tantrums alone, she constantly called us asking for help to control her. The breaking point came when my sister was arrested and my parents asked me to pay her bail as I was the only one with enough money to do so. Despite not liking my sister, I was convinced by my parents that she was family and I should do it, so I ended up paying. The problem came later, I think. After seeing that I had paid her bail, my sister became more interested in how much I really earned, which was a substantial amount. Therefore, she recently came to my house. She sat down with me and my brothers, talked about how beautiful the house was and asked when we were going to leave it. I told her that my brothers would leave when they had enough money and that I wasn't concerned and they could stay as long as they wanted. That's when everything started to go downhill. She looked at me confused and said that it wouldn't be possible because she wanted to live alone there and didn't want them or me around, and that everyone would have to move out as soon as possible. I asked her why I would do that, and she said that she had just been released from jail and wanted to rebuild her life, but she needed a big house like mine for people to see that she had changed and to recover. Furthermore, she also wanted my savings because she needed to buy new fancy clothes and travel again to show people that she had recovered. I thought she was joking, but incredibly she wasn't. I told her that if she wanted to live there for a while, I would accept as long as she followed the rules, but I wouldn't give her anything. She just started screaming and at that moment I told her to leave because I wouldn't tolerate her insolence in my own house. She tried to shout again, but when she realized that no one would listen to her, she just left angrily. Now my parents call me constantly saying that I should give my house to her because she has suffered so much and that it's only fair that I do it, but I won't fall for that. She has now shown me that she's beyond redemption and will never change, and I won't be the one to continue spoiling her. Update: my spoiled sister is out of jail and now she expects me to give her everything to start her life over. A few months had passed since my sister's dramatic visit, and her presence in my life had dwindled to a distant memory. My brothers continued to live with me, working and saving up to eventually set out on their own. Things were relatively peaceful, and the drama my sister had caused felt like a nightmare that had finally passed. I had come to terms with the fact that she would never change, and I was determined not to be in a nightmare any longer. But as time went by, and I hadn't turned to my sister, I started to wonder about her whereabouts. Had she really moved on as she claimed, or was she just plotting her next move? The nagging uncertainty festered in the back of my mind. Then, a strange turn of events occurred when I decided to take a week-long vacation to clear my head and give my brother some space to relax in the house. I figured it would be a good opportunity for me to unwind and leave behind the constant concerns of my sister's erratic behavior. Little did I know, my vacation would set in motion a chain of events that would leave me in shock and disbelief. As I returned home from my trip, I was met with a sight that I couldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams. My sister had not only returned but had effectively taken over my house. She was squatting there, calling it her own, and refusing to let me in. I was left standing on my own doorstep, dumb boyfriend daunted and incredulous. I tried to reason with her, explaining that this was my home, that I was the rightful owner, and she had no claim to it. But she remained stubborn and unyielding, her sense of entitlement undiminished. To make matters worse, the squatter laws in our state made it impossible for the police to forcibly remove her from the premises. I was stuck in a legal quagmire, unable to regain access to my own property. Desperation set in as my parents, who had always favored my sister, took her side in this bizarre battle. They claimed she deserved the house and that I should find another place to live. Their support for her shocked me, and it felt like a betrayal. 3 months passed in this nightmarish limbo. I was forced to live in my car, struggling to make ends meet while my sister continued to occupy my home. It was a never-ending nightmare, a twisted inversion of the spoiled child who had been coddled and enabled for so long. Now, the tables had turned, and I was the one who felt helpless and abandoned. As I sat in my car, contemplating my next move, I couldn't help but wonder how my life had taken such a surreal turn. It was clear that I would need to find a way to regain my home, but it wouldn't be easy. My sister's sense of entitlement and my parents' misguided support had created an obstacle that would take everything I had to overcome. But I was determined not to let her continue to ruin my life, and I knew I had to find a way to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Part 3. My spoiled sister is out of jail and now she expects me to give her everything to start her life over. The situation had reached a point where I was willing to do almost anything to get my home back. With my sister stubbornly occupying the house, and the support of my parents firmly in her corner, I realized that I needed to resort to unconventional methods. Drastic times called for drastic measures. The plan that formed in my mind was unconventional, to say the least. I had heard about a peculiar way to draft people out of a space by introducing a horrendous smell, and I decided to go it dry. I concocted what I called chicken milk bombs, which were essentially glass jars filled with a mixture of rotting chicken and spoiled milk. The pressure inside these jars would build up until they exploded, leaving behind an unbearable stench that would render the house uninhabitable. Carefully, I hid these noxious jars throughout the house, knowing that my sister's aversion to any kind of unpleasantness would play right into my hands. It was a cruel method, but I felt like I had no other option. The next step was to introduce bed bugs into the house. I obtained a small infestation from a friend, and, under the cover of darkness, I discreetly released them into the various corners of the house. Bed bugs are notoriously difficult to get rid of and would create an additional layer of discomfort for my sister. To further unsettle her, I enlisted the help of a friend who was willing to act creepy in front of her Ring doorbell in the middle of the night. The eerie footage captured by the doorbell camera would surely unnerve her and add to her growing discomfort. As the days passed, my sister's frustration grew. She could no longer tolerate the putrid smell, the relentless bed bugs, and the bizarre occurrences caught on her security camera. The combination of these factors finally drove her out of my house, just as I had hoped. I was finally able to regain possession of my home. However, my victory came at a steep cost. My family, already leaning towards my sister's side, witnessed my extreme actions and concluded that I had lost my mind. They were convinced that I needed psychiatric help and insisted on sending me to therapy to address my perceived obsession with my sister's eviction. It was a bittersweet ending to the bizarre saga that had taken over my life. I had my home back, but I had lost the support of my family. In the end, I couldn't help but wonder if my extreme measures had been worth it. But I was determined to rebuild my life, far away from the spoiled sister who had caused so much chaos, and hopefully, in time, my family would come to understand my perspective.